So then, Egypt has approved an investment law in the latest demonstration that it wants to be easier for you to actually do business over there. President El-Sisi wants to surpass the economic performance last enjoyed when one Hosni Mubarak was in power. But what exactly does this mean for you as an investor? Do these reforms go far enough? Those are the questions we'll be asking tonight on this edition of Global Business Africa. I'm Raman Yang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Here's what's coming up. The Trading Africa Summit opens in Cape Town, South Africa. We'll have the details of what was discussed. And there's quite the dispute over chicken in Harare. Interesting story this. You certainly want to stick around for that. Right, let's start with a question. Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia. What do these three countries have in common? Well, for starters, two things. The Nile is one, and concerns about the impact Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam will have on water flow downstream. Now, all three countries rely on the Nile in one way or another to supply water for domestic consumption and for agriculture. Ethiopia's construction of the continent's largest hydroelectric dam on that particular river, however, has Egypt concerned. As Mahia Muto reports, tensions along the Nile are rising once again.
Egypt and Sudan say the dam, which is being built on the Blue Nile, could affect their access to water. But during this latest round of talks in Khartoum, there's positive vibe in the air. The Sudanese foreign minister hopes the two commissioned studies will provide a clear solution for the remaining issues over the dam's construction.
We expect that the two suggested studies will contribute in providing positive solutions for the remaining issues and the consequences of building the dam, especially the first, raising of the dam and the effects caused when it starts functioning.
Egypt reportedly fears that the dam will diminish its share of the Nile, which provides almost all of the desert nation's water needs. But today, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry is upbeat.
In the name of Egypt and its 40 million people, we stress that we participate in this meeting with great intentions. We all hope that our meetings will lead to more durable solutions that reflect real awareness of the benefits of the dam, understanding of the troubling issues caused by the construction of the dam in order to be able to provide political support and necessary guarantees for the success of the tripartite technical committee.
Despite the appearance of a united front, water expert Ahmed Al-Mufti doubts this current round of talks will differ much from past meetings.
I think that these meetings will not be different from the tripartite meetings that took place in May 2011. It will just result in increasing the gap. Maybe it will not be clear in the official announcements, but the vision and the position of Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt will have gaps, even if in some cases it seems that the Sudan position appears closer to that of Ethiopia.
The dam is expected to have a reservoir of about 70 billion cubic meters, which is scheduled to start filling this year. In Asosa, Ethiopia, workers continue the race against time to build the dam in Benishangul Gumuz region near the Sudanese border before a July 2017 deadline. The infrastructure is being built at a cost of $42 billion and will have the capacity to produce around 6,000 megawatts of electricity, essentially becoming Africa's biggest hydroelectric power station. Mahia Mutua, CCTV.
Egypt's cabinet has approved a long-awaited draft investment law. Now, it seeks to make investments much less vulnerable to legal disputes or even changes in government. More importantly, though, it also aims to cut Egypt's notorious red tape. President El-Sisi's government needs to address foreign investors' concerns before an investment conference held in mid-March, where it hopes to secure up to $12 billion in commitments from domestic and foreign investors. Now, officials and investors both cite red tape is a main impediment to putting their money into the North African country, where economic growth rates over the last 3 years have been hovering around 2%. That level is just way too low to cut the widespread unemployment the country does suffer from. Now, coalition government is waiting in the wings to assume power in Lesotho, but that might not all be good news, especially for the country's economy, as Angelo Kopla explains now from the capital, Maseru.
The Prime Minister-elect is no stranger to running the country. He was Prime Minister here from 1998 to 2012. And the issues he faced then, he's going to be facing now. It's a non-diversified economy. There's a little bit of mining, there's some water revenue and a very small textile industry. Added to which, the SA Customs Union is thinking, or at least South Africa is thinking about reviewing its contribution to Lesotho. Because between Lesotho and Swaziland, they get some 60% of that revenue. There's also a really big problem. The civil service here is large. It's the biggest employer in the country. And unless that gets cut back, it's going to be a drain on the economy. And we're now hearing that the donors are reviewing their funding because of governance issues. If that review doesn't go well, Lesotho will be in bigger trouble. I'm Angelo Coppola for CCTV in Lesotho.
Now, where do you stand in the debate between the Africa Rising narrative and its proponents and those who counter that with Afro-realism? How will volatile swings in international oil prices affect the economies of Africa's biggest crude producers, like Nigeria, for example? Those are some of the issues being discussed in this year's annual Trading Africa Summit in Cape Town. Travis Andrews was there.
With Africa still considered as a frontier continent by some investors, tools are going to be needed to successfully navigate through its rapidly growing, risky and liquid markets. That was the crux of discussion at the 4th Trading Africa Summit, where more than 500 senior delegates from the regional trading and investment community gathered to assess investment opportunities and trends in Africa. The continent already has 7 of the world's fastest growing economies and is further primed for growth.
I think there's a lot of growth yet to happen in Africa. I mean, that's the story so far. I think what's interesting is you're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of financial services, the mobile money in Africa, the amount of unbanked that are going to be banked through mobile money, the knowledge economy growing, innovation, those types of things. Really, these growth opportunities are becoming more and more unlimited.
This growth has also led to a number of multinationals setting up shop in South Africa, including global law firms, tax consultants and financial advisors who are assisting investors with large-scale FDIs throughout the continent. Also under discussion was the commodities market, which has seen oil markets under mounting pressure, but that hasn't staved off investors who are increasingly turning to Africa for high-yielded returns.
You still have global players who are looking for opportunities, but also incentives. Does the countries have the incentives that interest me? It can be just the taxation framework. Sometimes it's just the investment incentives.
Investors are looking for some stability in local regulatory environments. They're looking for growth. Depending on the industry, they're looking for different consumer markets, in other words, accessing new markets. And they're really also looking for diversification opportunities in what is really a high-growth continent.
Africa is open for business is a term used quite broadly to attract large-scale investment. But some believe a new trend is emerging in engagement between the investor market and the continent.
The buzz is now really about the individual countries. I think that's finally, it's the first year that I really see this, is that people now all realize it's about certain countries. Mozambique, for example, there's gas opportunities, there's mining opportunities, Tanzania, there's other opportunities. It's not just anymore about West Africa, East Africa. So generally speaking, well, we see retail coming up as a sort of a buzzword, because people now do understand that there's over 1 billion people living on this continent, and that they start to get a bit of more money, and that Africans are consumers.
For now, though, there may still be many challenges to overcome in completely smoothing over investor sentiment. But the continent does seem well on its way in establishing itself as one of the global investment destinations of choice. One big trend that is emerging is the return of Africa's diaspora. Now, that may be due largely to the opportunities that large-scale investment is bringing and making the continent a far more competitive business market than ever before. Travis Andrews, CCTV, Cape Town.
Let's head back to Cairo now. Earlier on, we spoke about the draft investment law approved by the cabinet. Now it's off in the hands of the President, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, for ratification. Let's get the latest from Yasser Hakim. He's in the Egyptian capital with the latest developments on this. Yasser, in some instances, foreign investors have to get permits from over 70 different government agencies. To what extent does this draft law cut down and consolidate that number?
Well, according to the law, it's only, they call it the one window law, where investor will only deal with one person, and this person, this official will take care of all the paperwork, and it will not take any time, maybe a few weeks to get all the paperwork done, all the licenses. It usually takes 3 or 4 years to take just the land, to get the opportunity to have a piece of land. Now they're saying there are, as I quote the Minister of Investment, he said, we will revolutionize the business environment in Egypt through this one window system. There will also be incentives, non-tax incentives, like the government will be helping investors, paying part of the insurance on the workers and the laborers. It will be easier to have a piece of land, to own a piece of land, or have a long-term lease. And as long as you are away from the main cities like Cairo, you take in the suburbs or in Upper Egypt, you get more incentives in taxes, in services, in ownership, and in paperwork as well. So they're saying they are revolutionizing, but this will take around 18 months to implement. We will see then how it will be implemented. Will it be up to the standard that they're talking about?
Indeed. For the sake of context, however, give us a sense of some of the key projects that will be pitched at next week's investment conference, because that clearly would be one of the key acid tests for the viability of this new law.
Exactly, and how the investors will take to that. But mainly there will be a big project in the Suez Canal, where there will be a whole city to be built there, with all the hotels, with the housing, with schools. A whole city will be built beside the Suez Canal area. There will be industrial zones built especially for certain countries. Already Russia and China have allocated their own industrial city zones in close to Suez Canal. There will be another new capital, they call it the New Cairo, that will also be built. There will be energy products, especially in the renewable energy projects, that will be also handed over to investors to study. There will be electricity grid, a new electricity grid for the private sector. It's now owned totally by the government and the public sector. There will be a private sector electricity grid, which is something totally new for Egypt. There are, and real estate as well. There will be 11 projects given by the government for the real estate to study and also work on.
Indeed, we'll keep tabs on that investment conference when it does happen and get underway. That's Yasser Hakim live in the Egyptian capital of Cairo. Let's make a quick run through the markets here for you. Lots of red ink coming our way today. Red numbers coming through. The JSE All Share and the top 40 indices rather down by about half a percentage point. The EGX 30 down by about a tenth. The NSE 20 Nairobi down by about a quarter. Now, speaking of Nairobi, some interesting results coming through today. A tale of two banks really is the main issue here. On one hand, NIC reporting a 24% rise in pre-tax, in full-year pre-tax profits. On the other hand, National Bank taking quite the hit in its after-tax profits, mainly due to a one-off restructuring cost. Coming up next, we'll be looking at the boom and bust cycle as it plays out in a gold mining town in Cote d'Ivoire. We'll also bring you a conversation with Ethiopia's Prime Minister. How does he plan to transform Ethiopia's economy? Find out next.
Sustainable development and a commitment to developing partnerships with Africa. Some of the key phrases already used at the Africa Global Business Forum here in Dubai.
There is a need for a predictable environment in which investors have to put their money.
Hello there, we're about a quarter way into the hour. You're still watching Global Business Africa. Now let's talk about chicken, of all things. Residents in Harare are on a collision course with city authorities over this tame, well-loved, much-eaten bird. You see, for years, backyard poultry projects have been a source of much-needed extra income for many a Zimbabwean citizen. But now those chicken farms are being banned. Farai Makatuya explains why.
1962 regulations which outlawed backyard chicken rearing because the clucking, crowing, quacking and gobbling of poultry disturbed the peace is now threatening to disturb the livelihoods of thousands in Zimbabwe's capital. Traders at Mbare Musika, the busiest chicken market, say the ban goes against the government's economic recovery plans which seek to empower ordinary citizens by allowing them to start up their own businesses.
This is the best way for us to feed our families in these hard times. If we enforce these old laws, our children will go hungry.
The city, though, insists this is not a blanket ban.
There are certain conditions that one has to meet before you can rear chickens. Yes, definitely the economy is not performing well, but when you make the extra dollar, you must not then unnecessarily inconvenience your neighbor.
That means no flies, smells or rodents and other vermin which usually accompany chicken projects. But it's not just these feathered creatures that are under threat. The city is also planning a clampdown on the estimated 20,000 vendors selling their wares on the streets. Their number grows by the day as more people lose their jobs and are forced out onto the streets. Some describe them as an eyesore and a health risk, while others believe instead of pushing them out, the city should find a way to accommodate them since they serve a business need.
Our direct marketing in Zimbabwe has basically been taken over by the vendors, right? Who are actually interfacing directly with the market and selling very, very competitive prices. We need to say now, how can we as a country structure our city so that these people can actually be a success, as opposed to use old laws?
Old or not, the law is the law, and the city is determined to enforce it.
It is a 1962 bylaw, but it's still a very relevant bylaw. The environment should still be aesthetically correct.
It looks like things could get worse for these people trying to beat the hard times and make an extra buck if the city's plans do go through. Farai Makatuya, CCTV, Harare, Zimbabwe.
The reality of boom and bust cycles in mining is slowly dawning on the residents of the Ivorian town of Tongon. 5 years of active exploration by the British firm Randgold has transformed the economic fortunes of the town, as well as the lives of residents. Now, however, there are fears that all these gains could be reversed once gold reserves are depleted. Aldi Karelsa has the details.
Welcome to Côte d'Ivoire's gold country. Once a poor rural community, the village of Tongon in the north now glows since becoming a regional gold mining hub 5 years ago. Electricity and clean water flows to all the homes. Brick and mortar houses replaced many huts, and new schools and a maternity clinic have sprung up. Randgold, the Jersey-based British company, says it has spent almost $5 million on helping local people.
They want us to build a water tower. I turned to the president of Randgold, who said no problem, it will be done.
Of Randgold's 1,600 employees at the mine, 80% of them are recruited from surrounding villages. But in 6 years, the mine will close, and villagers who abandoned agriculture for the mining business are concerned for their future.
Train up the young people. This needs to be done in several stages, with livestock, other animals like fish. Randgold must take the initiative to train young people, in case the company disappears, so we won't be able to depend on it for our survival.
Such fears are allayed by the company's CEO, who also has his eyes on the future. He's keen to use existing infrastructure for developing new projects.
And our big focus is agribusiness. You've seen, we've brought in the power in a public-private partnership. We've brought in the water. What more do you need?
The shelf life of Tongon's gold mine might be short, but Randgold has discovered other gold deposits nearby. This offers some comfort to the local people, for the time being at least. Aldi Karelsa, CCTV.
If it is to maintain its high single-digit growth momentum, Ethiopia has to move up the value chain in several sectors of its economy, particularly agriculture. And that's a key challenge that faces Ethiopia's Prime Minister Haile Mariam Desalegn and his government. In an exclusive conversation with Girum Chala, he detailed the implementation of the country's growth plan.
What are the points of action to bring growth in this country?
First of all, our economic strategies are people-centered. The first one is, this is an agrarian economy basically. Of course, there is a structural transformation taking place to move into an industrial economy. But still, the major share of our economy is in production sectors like agriculture. And in this aspect, I think we need to modernize our agriculture, modernize the skills and technology absorption capacity of our farmers. And I think that's taking shape, but we need to move to scale up to all our farmers in the rural areas. We have to move also to private sector farming, into large-scale farming with abundant, available, fertile land we have in the peripheries, and similarly intensive private investment like floriculture and horticulture and animal husbandry, and livestock sector in general. So this value, high value production in agriculture is the main source of growth for the future.
Ethiopia has made significant strides when it comes to reducing poverty, and the country has also achieved the Millennium Development Goals, most of it we can say. What lessons, Mr. Prime Minister, do you think other African states can take from Ethiopia's example?
We have best practices in our health extension system. Most African countries has taken as a best example, and they are trying to emulate this one. We have best examples in agricultural extension services to our farmers, and some of them are taken. Of course, we have brought this from China. Initially, the best practice has been, organized from China, but we have modified it, adopted to our own situation. It's now a different breed. But the initial idea has come from China. So we take and we give, and I think this is a process that's taking place.
10.3% of economic growth has been achieved last year in this country. And it is not without a cost. The country has been taking loans from international organizations, perhaps governments. And Mr. Prime Minister, do you think the government can afford all of those loans that you have taken?
If you see the history of development of the fast-growing countries, South Korea, Germany, all countries, at the early stage of development, you will not have, and you don't have enough domestic savings. So you need to include also foreign savings into your economy. And in Ethiopian case, we are still at a low risk level. We haven't even gone to the middle risk level. So we are always at the green stage of taking these loans. We are very conscious about it, and we are managing it properly when we take loans into our system. By the way, those who are giving us the loan are not foolish. They also see that Ethiopia can pay back. Obviously Ethiopia can pay back because this is an emerging economy. On the other hand, we have enough checking points where we are at the green stage of taking loans that can be paid back. So in this regard, I think we have no problem at all. We have even more rooms now to include more loans to come into the economy, because this is a 96 million population and a huge economy. And these loans we are getting are not so much big.
Now, Kenya's Karachi Breweries is investing up to $55 million to increase its production capacity and hopefully its market share as well by a factor of 10. Its Chief Executive Officer Tabitha Karanja forecasts that the alcohol market in Kenya will grow by sixfold in about a year. On Grassroots Tonight, Noel Makugu has the outlook on the brewers' fortunes.
The $5 billion investment will chiefly be used to build a new 1 million hectoliters a year brew house and a bottling line. This would help the company raise its market share from the current 3%.
Immediately after the beer got into the market, we knew
that the capacity that we had already launched was not enough. So we had to go back again to our drawing board so that we could think of how we can increase the capacity.
Owned by the Karanja family, Keroche started by making spirits and wines in 1997 before diversifying into beer in 2008. Its Summit Lager and Summit Malt beers compete with products by Diageo's East Africa breweries, which enjoys a commanding lead with the popular brands such as Tusker.
Being the first truly Kenyan to invest in brewing in the country, of course, it was a challenge because even people, you know, we as Kenyans or Africans, we don't believe in ourselves. So from there, it had to take time. It took time before people could realize, hey, kumbe even us we can even do better than what the multinationals can do.
The expansion was about 80% funded through a loan from Barclays Bank, while the rest was generated internally. The increased production should allow Keroche to start distributing its products, which include spirits and table wines in Uganda and Tanzania.
There is a gap because people need choice, and this choice, what people are looking for, is of higher premium, you know, higher premium beer that is naturally brewed, 100% malted beer, brewed beers and all that. That's what people are looking for. They want a quality beer.
Keroche will raise further capital for investment in about 5 years when it offers its shares on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. The company is considering putting up a malting plant in the future at a minimum cost of just about $11 million. Noel Makugu, CCTV.
And finally, the smart home was a key focal point at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Several manufacturers on hand with a variety of devices that allow you to remotely control the lights and the temperature of your home and even pull a pint of beer straight from the comfort of your phone. Going by the gadgets on display, gaming will soon be jumping into wearable devices as well in about 4 years or so, having succeeded in developing fully immersive 3D experiences.
What we're showing is you can send standard action commands to disparate types of hardware devices, different OSs, different protocols, and you can group those things intelligently so that they happen, and you can send one standard action command and it happens all at once. You could easily apply the same thing to smart home usages, like, you know, when I get home and my garage door is opening, I automatically turn up the thermostat and turn up certain lights, turn on the TV, maybe you also pour a beer. And you could extend it over time to industrial settings and healthcare settings and transportation, etc.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm certainly looking forward to getting my hands on one piece of Oculus Rift. Now, onto the currencies here for you. As far as the year-to-date performance of the currencies we track is concerned, the Naira is doing particularly badly, down about 10% so far in the year. The Kenyan shilling relatively stable in the year-to-date, down about a third against the American dollar. The Rand, however, still being battered by a wave of bad economic data coming through from South Africa. Growth is still weak, but there's really no room to cut rates. We'll keep tabs on the South African story and how it develops in the next year or so. Right now, though, we're wrapping up this edition of Global Business Africa. We'd like hearing what you think about what we do around here. Global Business Africa at cctv.com is the email to use. And, of course, Facebook and Twitter are your ports of call when we're not on air. See you in the next 23 hours. I'm Ramanyang.